All right, welcome back to Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. Glad you could join us. This is Kenny Fogel with you, and I hope you enjoying today and hope you're having a good evening right now. Right, today with us we've got a very special guest, is a district judge here in Nelson County, Mr. Jack Kelly. First of all, Jack, I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And Judge, first of all, I mean, it's rare we have an opportunity to have a sitting judge come in and talk to us a little bit, but because you stay pretty busy for one thing. I know every time I get, you've always got something that seems like you got going on.
There's always something that could be working on.
Well, the judicial system or the legal system, I guess in particular, is there's something, as you mentioned, always going on. But what's keeping you the most busy? What's keeping you up at nights right now? I mean, in Nelson County, what's going on in the judge world?
The after-hours duties of my job, what occurs after the courthouse closes at 4:30, I get calls from police officers to sign search warrants.
Right.
I get calls from the dispatcher or police officer for someone has filed for an emergency protective order for domestic violence. Or I can get calls about emergency custody orders where there's severe neglect or abuse alleged against a child. So those are the things that's the middle of the night calls that come in occasionally.
And I guess just before we get into anything else, how routine is that? I mean, is that something you really have to think about and study? Like if you're going to do a search warrant, obviously, you know, that's something you're not going to take lightly.
Exactly.
So how does somebody convince you, I really need a search warrant to go in and search a place or something of that nature?
On a search warrant specifically, what happens is the officer shows up, they've already filled out the affidavit and have a proposed warrant there for me if I approve their affidavit. I look over the affidavit to see if there's probable cause to believe that wherever they're trying to search, whether it be someone's cell phone, someone's home, a car, that there's probable cause to believe that evidence is there for a crime to have been committed. And so I'll swear the officer in, I sign off that the affidavit has been sworn before me, and if that probable cause is there, which isn't the highest burden at law, then the warrant will be signed. They go and execute it and then bring me back and tell me what they found.
Well, and again, going back, you mentioned an EPO, and I know you and I have had this conversation off camera before, but it's one of the toughest things for a judge to have to work on is like a domestic violence issue, because, I mean, you know that domestic violence is going on, but if somebody doesn't press charges or if somebody doesn't, or changes their story or something of that nature, there's very little, your hands are tied to some degree.
Yeah, the law says, you know, when somebody comes, first of all, to file for an EPO, it's what's called an ex parte order. I don't get to hear from the other side. It's just the person that's requesting it at that time, and if I grant the emergency order, then we have a hearing within 14 days. And at that hearing, often the person who filed shows up and says, no, it didn't quite happen that way, or
emotions have died down.
I don't want to pursue this anymore. I had a lady in today where I'd actually granted the next level for an EPO, which is after the hearing, it's a DVO, domestic violence order, a more permanent order. I'd granted hers the last time she was there 5 or 6 months ago, and she had been there prior before and filed one and shown up and asked for it not to be pursued. So I went through that with her. I said, look, you had one in early 2014, I think. You said you didn't want to follow through with it. And then later on, 2014, you had another one. We granted it, and now you want to drop it. I said, you know, you're turning into the boy who cried wolf. Certainly we'll take care of you. If something happens, call us. But you got to understand, we can't keep going through this repetitive cycle. But, you know, domestic violence is a very serious issue. So the victims occasionally it's felt that they are re-victimized if you don't.
Well, really, most domestic violence people, you're going to see them again and again and again, but they feel helpless in many cases. I know, but at the same time, you're helpless too if they don't ask for help.
Yeah, the law says that if they come in after filing the original petition and want it dismissed, I have to.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I'll make them go talk to our local advocate, Shona Shekels, for a while and see if they can work something out or at least get them some counseling. Now, after the order's been entered, I have a little more leeway and discretion on whether or not I should cease the order going forward. But, you know, as in the one I was talking about today, there was a child involved, and they had no one that would effectuate the exchange of the child. So by me not setting it aside, which is what I did, it would have been saying that, in this case, the father would not be able to have any contact with his child. And you know, that's extremely difficult to put anybody through.
Well, part of the judicial system, obviously, too, is you're dealing with juries. So you're not the end-all everything. And I know in jury cases, you never know. Take a marijuana case. I mean, obviously, a marijuana case in this area is going to be hard to get 12 people to say, yeah, somebody's guilty of something. So it's difficult, even as a sitting judge, to sit there and you know that possibly a law has been broken, but when they turn it over to a jury, how much you can't really influence the jury, but what can you do?
No, jury trials are pretty much in the jury's hands. The way the local county attorney Matthew Height always explains it, and when he's in front of a jury, is he says that the attorneys are there to present the sides of their clients, his being the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the other side being the defense, and the judge, being me, is there to just call balls and strikes, to tell you what evidence can come in, what evidence can't come in, and what you can hear, and what the law is. And it's up to the jury to apply those facts and what evidence is admissible to the law and determine whether
Well, it has to be frustrating at times when you look at somebody and you say, I know something's wrong here, but there's nothing I can do about it because of either a legal technicality, a jury decision, or something of that nature, and you got to let somebody walk out the door that you, in your heart, and I know you're not supposed to let emotions get involved, but in your heart, you know, this person ought to be behind bars.
Oh, it happens a lot. You know, I handle only misdemeanor cases and felonies to a certain level.
Yeah.
But the main misdemeanor case that gets litigated here are DUIs, and there are a lot of technical hoops that the officers have to jump through to be able to get their case to a jury. And that's my job sometimes, is to suppress the evidence that they have if it wasn't gotten, not that the officer did anything wrong, but there was just one or two hoops that he didn't quite get up over before he got there.
Right. What's a typical week for Judge Jack Kelly?
Mondays we do juvenile cases. Juveniles charged with committing some sort of crime. Then we handle abuse and neglect cases where juveniles or kids have been taken away from their parents or left with their parents but put services in the home. Occasionally on Monday afternoons we have paternity court, where if a couple has a child, we establish paternity and potentially start child support. Every Tuesday we handle adult criminals. That's traffic cases, speeding tickets, DUIs, misdemeanors, and then felonies up to the probable cause level, which is a hearing that we have to see if they've been arrested. They have within 10 days, if they're still in jail, they have to have a hearing to see if there's probable cause for that case to go on to the grand jury. Wednesdays are domestic violence, small claims, which is any civil claim under $2,500. I also do probates, to where if someone's passed away, to probate their will or open up their estate on Wednesdays.
I know guardianships. I know I was involved with that was the case here a little while back.
Those are on Wednesdays typically as well, and do evictions, forcible detainer actions. So that's a typical week and the main crux of the cases that I deal with.
Well, you went back a few minutes ago and something really struck me. You say something like an umpire in a way. In a way, I guess that's true. You're between the prosecution and defense, but you also, and I know we had something went on just the past week or so with another judge, not you, but another judge, basically between the police and the criminal. I guess alleged criminal, let's say. But you've got to have a balancing act there as well. You know, take into consideration both sides. I mean, the police have a job to do. But at the same time, criminals or alleged criminals have rights too.
Oh yeah, very much. You know, we all have rights protected under the Kentucky and U.S. Constitution. That that's what I was talking about in the DUI cases. A lot of times, what is litigated is whether or not the person should have even been stopped by the officer. If weaving within their own lane is enough to stop them for probable cause that a crime has been committed or is being committed. So that those are some of the things that are litigated quite often in criminal law.
As a judge, I know this goes all the way up to the federal judge level anywhere else, but people say, well, judges have got a little bit too much opinion in things. They throw their own opinion into things, but basically you're interpreting things. And I guess maybe you interpret it the way you've been taught and the way you've been as a former attorney, but you don't have as much leeway as I think most people think you do.
No, there's a strict set of rules out there that we have to follow, whether it be on our own ethical standards or the standards that the state legislature has put forth before us, or the courts above us, so that they all tell us what the law is, and we just apply the law to the case before us. Certainly, the way a judge is raised would impact how they would decide a case, and your background, and that's why the electorate puts you in there to do that.
What makes a good judge?
Someone that can make a strong decision swiftly. You know, there's a big complaint that the justice system takes too long. But if we took as much time with every case, or got a person's case up in front of us as quick as they wanted it, we would need about 10 times as many judges as we have. And so that's going to raise everybody's taxes astronomically.
Right.
So, to make a good decision in an efficient manner and be fair to both sides. You know, you hear a lot of times, I used to in the practice of law, well, you go to one court, all that judge is a former prosecutor, so he's going to side with the prosecution. That judge is a former defense attorney, so he's going to side side of the defense. But a good judge can come in and literally have the blinders on and weigh the evidence and see which way it should go.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's a lot more to being a judge than a lot of people realize. I mean, as you say, it goes even at nights and weekends and things like that. I mean, you're going to be called out or if something goes on. But as a judge, what leeway do you have in guiding the judicial system in Nelson County? Is there anything that, I hate to say, do you have an agenda for something? Because that sounds like, you're using some sort of prejudice. But are you seeing something that we could do to make Nelson County a better place to live and work? And
Well, I just had a dinner last night, an annual dinner for CASA, which is Court-Appointed Special Advocates.
Right.
And what they are volunteers from the community who come in, and in the child's neglect and abuse cases, they volunteer and go into the homes and see what's wrong and try to help shape things up. They go in there with Child Protective Services. There's attorneys. There's a lot of people involved in there, but they're citizens off the street who are not tied down by the regulations that the Child Protective Services can be, and they just give really a common sense idea. So at that meeting, that's a great organization. They're looking for new volunteers now. If anybody's interested in that, Cindy Hibbs is the executive director and the person to contact on that. I was talking with Celeste Dawson, who is on the Foster Care Review Board, and we were talking about a lot of issues going on in the community. A lot of the problems that are occurring, I feel, from what I've seen, even with the shootings that have been going on recently all around the country, there's a major mental health problem in the community, in the country, that is not quite being addressed. I don't have the answer. I went to law school, but there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of people in jail that have mental health issues, not to the level where they are incompetent or to the level where they shouldn't possibly be incarcerated. They know what they did was wrong.
Yeah.
But if those issues were addressed previously, they may never have gotten themselves
Is that something we're set up for now? We probably need new laws at some point, because I don't think we've addressed that over the years.
There are not enough beds to treat, or enough facilities to treat the people that are there now. So I don't believe, we are not set up to do it now. Of course, with everything else, it's a funding issue. And where the funding comes from, who knows? But I believe that a lot of our crimes could be resolved by that, and a lot of the issues for quality of life. Right now in Nelson County, over this year through the end of September, our traffic offenses are up 22%. Our misdemeanor filings in district court are up 26%, and our felony filings in district court are up 33%.
Does this mean our population is growing, or we got a lot more bad people out there?
I don't think it's more bad people. I think it's more getting caught. I know that both.
So our police are actually doing the job.
Well, I think they've always done the job, but I think now they're fully staffed.
Yeah.
I think in the past maybe they weren't fully staffed. That's my guess. I know Chief McCubbin and Sheriff Mattingly have made a great push to make sure they are fully staffed, and worked with their officers to make sure there's more on the road at the time, and broken down the areas they cover pretty well. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and certainly, as we know, our area is growing. So the more growth you have, the more crime you're going to have too.
Well, we know you're busy out there, and we appreciate you stopping in here. And again, I think it gives us a little insight of what's going on behind the judge's bench sometime. A lot of us see it from the other side of the bench, but you see it from a whole different perspective and angle than most of us get a chance to, and we appreciate what you're doing. All
right, thank you.
All right, well, thanks a lot. Jack Kelly here, the District Judge, Nelson County. We appreciate him being here and appreciate you tuning in. We'll be right back on Community Focus here on Channel 6 TV. We'll be right back.